Hello, hello.
Happy Sunday afternoon. So we thought it would be a good idea to do a live this Sunday afternoon. If you're like me, I tend to watch lives like when it's convenient. I have a hard time sometimes with scheduling watching it live, but I love watching the recordings, and that's also sometimes when I take notes and stuff that I watch. So hopefully that is what you would find helpful in this video. But we have been thinking a lot about spring on our farm. We're working on field plans. We're starting to tear down summer stuff that's over. And so the theme of this live, especially in the beginning, is going to be a lot of questions that were submitted about spring. So I have a good amount of spring questions, and then once we get through those, I have kind of like a grab bag of questions that were submitted that weren't technically spring, but would be really good to answer and go over. So if you're ready, we'll introduce ourselves. You don't know who we are. Eric and Alex. We are a year 2 Oklahoma flower farm selling retail market bouquets from our roadside stand. That is how old we are, where we grow, which is zone 7, and we're retail. So a lot of our answers to these questions are going to be retail specific. So if you sell to florists, some of your decision making metric might be a little different. And we can talk about that. We can talk about like if we were selling to florists, maybe how would we change some of this decision making. But if you sell retail, either at like a farmer's market, a flower subscription, or a roadside stand, we are going to share a lot of how we make decisions for those type of markets.
We're currently not in Oklahoma.
You're not in Oklahoma.
And we're actually wearing a little bit more warm clothing from where we're located.
We're on vacay.
A brief vacay. We're already getting
we got a question.
questions
or a comment. You're saying they don't want to go to Oklahoma anymore because they
currently where we are in Oklahoma is still pegging 100 degrees.
Yeah.
We had a very mild July.
Yeah.
And then August has been like, we'll make up for lost time.
So we're enjoying wearing long sleeves right now.
So it helps us think a little bit beyond the season.
Yeah.
Although we always miss the heat the second it leaves.
I don't like being cold, so I'm not totally rushing it. I'm liking this quick little break of sweaters and then go back to being warm.
The air conditioners in the home would like a break though.
Our electrical bill would
like a break.
Okay, so first question in our spring category chunk. It is how many tulips are we ordering this year, and who is our favorite supplier? Ooh, hello from Montreal. Yay, Canada. How cool.
All right.
So we're kind of closer to Canada right now than when we're in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we are.
How many tulips have we ordered? We ordered our tulips back in May.
We just did this video, so
yeah,
our numbers should be squared away. We're going to do a whole video on tulips coming up, but
sharing everything we ordered, like the varieties and pictures and stuff. Ooh, Brussels.
All right.
That's fun.
What time is it in Brussels?
I know, really, what time is it? Is this like a nighttime viewing? So
8 hours?
Do you remember how many tulips we've ordered?
You said 6,000-ish. 5,800?
Not as, wow, ooh, we didn't order that many. Does that mean I could order that many? Can I add
1,000?
Can I add to our order?
You're 5,000 about?
So our exact number is...
I said double it from last year.
Our exact number is 5,200. We grew about 2,800, 3,000 tulips last year, sold every single one that I could harvest. And so this year we have ordered 5,200, which is not quite perfectly doubled, but definitely feels like a lot of tulips that we're going to have. But like Eric just said, we recorded a video on tulips sharing everything that we bought, why we purchased it, and then we'll do a subsequent video probably in November when we plant the tulips, so you can see our planting process and stuff. And if you're like me, this is why I love YouTube, because I love seeing it visually. I mean, I could read a blog post and listen to someone talk about it, but I like being able to see the process. So we're going to record all of that for you. And I said, who is our favorite supplier? I ordered most of our tulips from Leo Burby. Leo Burby is located in Ohio, and they are a wholesaler. You do not need a business license to order from them, but you do have to make a wholesale account. Like you have to submit an application and they approve it, and then you can order from them. But you don't need like a tax ID or a business ID like you do at some of the other wholesalers. So technically, if you are a home gardener that wants to order a lot for your home garden, you could get the wholesale prices at Leo Burby. You just have to submit an application. So we got most of them from Leo. And then we got a big chunk from Holland Bulb Company, which you can definitely just buy retail online, and they have more reduced prices the more you order. So you buy in bigger bulk, you get a bigger savings. And so we have some of our tulips from there. And in the video we recorded, we explained why we order from them, what we order from them, and kind of our thought process with seeking to be profitable during tulip season, of why we made some of those choices. So stand by, that'll be our video next week, so you won't have to wait too long to see that. And there'd probably still be enough time to order some tulips. I mean, some stuff's going to be out of order, is not what I meant, out of stock, but there's still some time. You don't need to plant
Did
till
you not
October.
buy any tulips from Ball?
No tulips from Ball.
Do they sell them, or you're just focusing on ranunculus and?
Right, Ball sells tulips, but I just bought ranunculus from them this year. Ball is new to me, and so I was kind of like distributing our purchasing and not going like all in on one company.
Hello, Linda.
Who is it, a fellow Oklahoma?
I pulled up chat.
Okay, good.
So we can't. I'm like, we're leaning into our device here, but
I hate when people do lives and they're like this close to the screen trying to read, and you're like, okay.
We got a Rau Lump from Estonia.
Ooh, we are international.
That is
Look
very
at
fun.
that.
Well, that's a cool international community of people who love flowers and this concept. So more beauty in God's earth.
Yeah. Someone's asking, there's a video of us cutting down the field and you were in long sleeves, and they're asking like why. The reason is our bug pressure is so high that we have to wear long sleeves to prevent just like getting annihilated by chiggers and mosquitoes and just like other bugs that we try to cover our body. So it's a question between like sweating so much you might pass out and getting bitten up so much you're miserable.
Yeah, there's
later.
a lot of assassin bugs.
Assassin bugs.
They love to be on sunflowers, and so
yeah, Google that bug.
yeah, I mean they're awesome because they're beneficial, but they also pack a
assassinating bite.
Yeah, they've got like that proboscis thing that wants to like stab down. But
Yeah.
they're great because they eat a lot of other bugs. But I mean, it's just like a whole party of bugs on
Yeah.
our property.
It's an ecosystem.
But it's amazing. Everywhere you live, God created your body to adjust and acclimate. So 85, some places will feel sweltering hot. And then you'll be like, how do you survive 100? And then you go there and your body somehow deals with it. And your body adjusts. It just, maybe you just sweat more.
No, maybe, yeah. Jump in the pool after. Okay, next question is the person asked, discuss everything about our process for hardy annuals. So hardy
Hold on. Before you go on.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about bulbs, where do people buy crates to grow bulbs?
That's a great question.
They're a hot item in the flower farming community.
They're a hot item.
You get them every year when you buy your next crate of bulbs, and you keep building your supply.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like when you make big orders, they're delivered in crates. So like we have probably 10 now on the property that we've accumulated. Some of them have our peonies in it right now. So that's one way. Sometimes you can contact those wholesale companies and ask if they have spares that you can order. And sometimes they won't like list it on their website, but you can order. You can also join like flower farming groups and ask, and some of these bigger farms that have accumulated more crates than they are ever going to utilize might be willing to sell them to you, especially if they're somewhat local to you. Then you can drive to them and pick them up. Sometimes they'll sell them, for like $10 a crate, and then you don't have to pay shipping for the crates and stuff. So it's one of those like search around answers rather than like go to this website's inventory to buy them. Would be my answer.
I'm sure there's a distributor. I believe it's the same kind of crate they put like 6 milks in or something.
Well, that's
it's
true.
Probably the same size.
That's true.
Dairy farms might have them.
Yeah, dairy farms or even like a Dollar General or something, depending on like what they do with their crates. Yeah, good question though for growing bulbs in crates. So our process for hardy annuals. Hardy annuals are, you plant them in the fall and they bloom in spring. And so that's where the hardy word comes from. It's basically like the annuals are tough enough to survive the winter to then bloom in spring for you, versus like traditional annuals that you would plant out after your last frost and then they grow until your first frost and then they die. That's like your standard annual. When people say annuals, that's usually what they mean. Hardy annuals is they're tough enough to either with a little bit of babying care or just out in the open survive the elements of winter to bloom in the spring for you. So a lot of flower farmers are either starting seeds now or getting ready to plant out their hardy annuals, typically end of September into October. They'll overwinter them and then they will have them to enjoy Depending on where you are, like end of March through May, early June is the hardy annual window. And especially for like our growing zone, we're zone 7, but zones don't tell you the heat, just tells you, your coldest you can get. We get hot really fast. Like our spring is pretty truncated. May, we just like blitz into the upper 80s and 90s pretty quickly. And so we wouldn't have enough time typically to plant spring annuals in like February, March, and give them enough time to grow and bloom before they'd be stunted by it getting way too hot. Because a lot of flowers like stock and ranunculus, they go dormant at a certain heat threshold. It's usually like 80, 85 degrees. They'll just stop producing. And so we're at a race against time. And so the way to get around it is you plant it in fall, you baby it all winter and it's growing its root structure, and then it has enough time to give you a bloom before the heat sets in and you're into summer. So those hardy annuals, this is where you can add in, but we've been calling ourselves lately like a steak and potatoes farm, because we don't grow a million varieties. Our growing theory is we want to grow a lot of a few things. So my hardy annual list is very short of what you would have that you could choose from. And so because of that, we don't have a very complicated process.
Yeah, we believe less is more. And so it simplifies and streamlines the full operation, which we'll get to probably later when we talk about decision paralysis for the customer. When you provide too much variety, I think at least, I mean, everyone's going to say everything's beautiful because so many of these plants just are beautiful. So God's creation and creativity on display and all these various little plants and colors, it just seems like an infinite variety. And when you look at those seed catalogs, it's like an infinite variety.
You want like
fair
add to cart, add to cart, add to cart.
Right. So we're trying to master, I think, basics that really slot in well seasonally, like tulips, ranunculus, peonies,
And
sunflowers, snapdragons, and then zinnias and what's the new one? Lysianthus.
Lysianthus, yeah.
2 years ago, I couldn't say any.
There you go. I'm so proud of you. So our hardy annual list is really short. We are growing snapdragons, larkspur, and bupleurum would fall into the category of a hardy annual. We are planting all of those at the end of October into early November. They're either going out into the field or into our high tunnel, which is yet to be built. But because I'm growing so few varieties, but I'm growing a lot of them, we made the decision to order plugs for those instead of starting them from seed, which I'd need to be doing right about now. We have our seed rack lights turned off. I'm not seed starting right now. I placed my order and they'll be delivered in October and we will plant them out. But we're planting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We're into the thousands in the 1,000 category with snapdragons.
We're a part-time. The flower farm is not full-time, so we have to think what's the lowest friction and the highest efficiency to sales, and not all that could be grown. Maybe maybe a few years from now, if we can be full-time, we might add. But we're trying to say what works reliably here, and really kind of row on it. Just expect it to be a big producer, and then again, we're reducing variety.
Our customers
and trying to reach more customers.
Yeah, our customers are not going to turn down a bouquet because they have 6 snapdragons in it instead of 3 snapdragons and then 2 other varieties of filler in it to make that $20 bouquet. They're not going to turn that down due to lack of variety, because they're just looking for beautiful color and abundance in their bouquets, rather than I want 8 different flowers and a lot of that filler in a bouquet. And so I'd rather grow 1,000 snapdragons in a lot of beautiful colors that bloom at staggered times than 300 snapdragons, 300 bells of Ireland, 300 campanula. That's just the decision we've made to simplify things, to reduce our labor, to reduce the mental load that it takes in learning how to grow all of these flowers correctly, harvest them correctly, condition them correctly. put them into a bouquet, nicely arranged and stuff. It is much easier, and it increases, I think, our profitability and efficiency when we niche down a bit. So all of that to say is our snapdragons are going undercover because they're a more tender, hardy annual, and our larkspur and bupleurum is going out into our field. They need to fend for themselves. I don't have the capacity to cover 120 feet with hoops and row covers. They're typically pretty tough unless we get like an absolute freak winter storm, which now probably we're going to. But typically larkspur is hardy to like zone 4. Zone 5, and we're in zone 7, so I'm not super worried about them. We ordered plugs, they're going out to the field. Good luck, guys, and I'll see you in April. It's kind of my attitude with
We
those.
got a question from Amy.
Yeah.
Hi from Sallisaw,
Oh,
Oklahoma.
I know Amy. Hi, Amy.
How do you keep the armadillo and deer from decimating your flowers? The deer aren't a problem yet because we're pretty exposed, so they don't come into our property. They tend to stick more to the tree area, and that's one of the nice things about our more pasture-based places. They won't want to be on our field, and we do have some good barbed wire fencing. It's fully around our property, so we're pretty enclosed, and we haven't yet seen any deer close to us. There is definitely deer in our area.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of treed areas.
It's a higher risk proposition for them to come visit us.
Well, like our neighbor right across the street, he's got deer that'll come right into his field. So he built the 8-foot fence around his growing plot, which is about a quarter acre. I mean, it's fully enclosed, electrified fencing. He's doing produce. We haven't had that. We haven't seen any deer at all. The armadillo question is interesting.
We have dillos.
They like to dig, but they're usually hunting for worms
in our lawn.
But we do have a lot of burrowing things they do kill. You're wondering what's killing some of the zinnias. I don't think they're like mole rats or whatever.
I think we might have to put traps out next year to see maybe what we can gather.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that like to dig into the ground, and like you look down in these holes in the ground, and you see like a pair of eyes down there.
Stop it. It's so creepy.
You're kind of like, what's down there?
Yeah. So the answer is like they're kind of
around. We do
have
some loss.
Yeah, there's some loss.
But it hasn't been massive.
No, it hasn't been. Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully.
I don't want them to get bold.
I mean, some of that's going to be probably a calculation you make. It'd be like, I lose 10%, so therefore I probably want to add 10% to my growing plot to offset losses. But we're not in a huge loss, but those are kind of things you really have to feel out in time on your property and say, how much more do I need to reasonably plant to meet my goals? Especially when you do like financial calculations.
Yeah.
Like how much of a row, at what price, how many stems, and then how many can you reasonably say you're probably going to lose and put in the compost pile.
That's true.
So.
Yeah, pad out those margins. Next question, is there anything we winter sow? And then tacked on to that is, do nigella and larkspur have to be covered in zone 7, which we are. So this year there's not anything we are winter sowing that I would put in the flower farming category. Like we're growing it in the field, irrigated in a row, planning to use as a cut flower, not doing anything like that. I will probably winter sow poppies, like a California poppy and an Iceland poppy, and maybe bachelor buttons in our raised garden and our perennial fields as color for us to enjoy, and then also it's marketing because everyone can see these fields and the raised garden and everything when they pick up the flowers, so it'll be like a landscaping design choice, but I'm not sowing them in a field. But poppies, I'll put
Bachelor's buttons were the blue
ones,
ones.
Bachelor
with
larkspur.
Okay.
Yeah, bachelor buttons I will do in November. Poppies I'll probably do in January. I did not need to cover either of them, even though we got really cold last year. I did not cover my nigella and I did not cover my larkspur, and all of it grew this year. I didn't have any frost damage loss. The only thing I had frost damage loss on was feverfew. It's because I didn't get my act together and have row cover to cover it, so they just kind of had to survive. I will say, all those flowers I just mentioned, larkspur, nigella, bachelor, and poppies, to my memory, all of those are surface sown seeds, or at least like 1/8 of an inch. Like we're talking barely cover. Things do not direct sow well in Oklahoma. It's a combination of bug pressure and wind, I find, for us. And when you put a seed on the surface of the soil and you live in Oklahoma, what happened was I wish I had a picture of this, but like I picture a 3x6 bed. I direct sowed Nigella, all perfect spacing on top. I watered it in. I did a light little sprinkle cover. And then winter happened and wind and everything. And so then when it germinated, it was like all the wind had pushed it against the board on one side. And I had all my Nigella like germinated just along one side. And so because of that, I either need to, if I want to grow these flowers, I need to start them inside. So I'm planting out a plug. I'm planting out as transplant in the spacing that I want, or I'm not growing it, or I'm doing it in like a landscape where it's like, grow where you land, I don't care. But from like a commercial spacing standpoint, direct sowing hardy annuals isn't really that easy for us. And like larkspur is a great thing to direct sow. It reseeds itself really well, all of the above. But I can't do that in an efficient, properly spaced and organized commercial way. So I'm buying plugs. So it might be different in your growing environment if you can more easily till up a patch and over sow and thin and just have your larkspur patch, for example. That wouldn't work for our setup. So I'm buying plugs or starting inside.
So I'm going to say hello to Linda, Southwest corner, even hotter and drier than you.
Oh, Southwest Oklahoma is a lot hotter.
And then Rao, I think it's Rao Lop from Estonia.
Ooh.
He's asking about dahlias and how they grow in our hot summer.
They
I'm sure
don't?
you probably can grow dahlias better than us
I
in
bet you they
Estonia.
can.
And then he also said that he's a one-year flower farmer and he did bouquets like we did, but they didn't sell well because it's not Estonia style.
Oh, interesting.
And so I guess my question would be, so like here in Oklahoma, especially in the summer, a lot of people associate certain flowers with probably how they were raised. And so I would say like, think like what flowers you saw and try to focus on those. It's amazing. Like you might think like, well, I want to grow stuff they haven't seen, but I think people have such a nostalgic, like my grandma grew these or whatever. It's like the products everyone grows or that grows themselves in Oklahoma, like zinnias are very basic, like the tomato of flower farming because they're kind of like at the basic, but like nobody can grow a zinnia like we can because we're figuring out how to grow like the next best version of it or getting seeds like the doubles.
The home gardener doesn't know.
The home gardener's like,
the
what are all these
varieties.
products that exist? And so like, they'll see our zinnias look as big as a dahlia sometimes. They almost look like a dinner plate dahlia. They get so big and people are blown away by that and they love that, even though you would think like that you can grow zinnias yourself on your own property. So I would try to figure out like in your area, what is it that people are used to or grew up with and kind of like make those your steak and potatoes and then find some of the unique ones to bring in.
Yeah, because if people are really unfamiliar with a flower, I think they also have a hard time determining value of like, what is this? Like, did you just cut this from your landscape? Is this a weed? Is this actually really valuable at $20? Like, they don't recognize what they're looking at, and so they have a hard time having perceived value on the product versus, like Eric was saying, something that's much more familiar. Then they're making more of like a size and amount of stems calculation to get to the price you're charging versus this is completely foreign to me and I don't know if I'm getting like a bouquet of landscape cuttings.
It's like a tutoring process with your customer. So focus on what they know and then slowly start to tutor them on new stuff.
That's a good point.
We've got Central Texas.
Yay!
Coming in. We got Northern West Virginia. And then Yanika in Montreal, I believe, says the first time I planted hardy annuals, I'm trying larkspur, bachelor buttons, and snapdragon in 5B.
Ooh, those will be beautiful.
Yeah.
And you'll get those in like May and June when we're already boiling hot.
And then Julie says, I have a hard time direct sowing bachelor buttons. It's annoying because they should be easy to direct sow.
Yeah. Well, you have my sympathies about direct sowing. I pretty much start everything from seed except for sunflowers now at this point. So if you have to start the bachelor buttons inside, even though it's frustrating seeing other people direct sow them, just do it that way. And they don't germinate too tricky inside. I started them from seed last year and it was okay. It wasn't as dramatic as some hardy annuals get really complicated with cold stratification and all of that, but bachelor should be okay.
Yeah, Ralph from Estonia says, yeah, I'm in zone 4-5, can grow dahlias in full sun, and they grow well and bloom well, and they don't die in the
Lucky
summer.
you.
Yeah. I mean, dahlias are really cool, but they're a fragile plant, so if you can do that. And then Elizabeth Vidgrain, in Europe, people usually prefer simpler and sober bouquets with maximum 2 to 3 types of flowers and colors.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to know your area.
Culturally,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
some cultural differences, and I think we've talked a lot about that. We're retail, and we kind of are like really paying attention to what people talk about and what people buy
Yeah.
in Oklahoma. You know, it's gonna be big, vibrant colored.
Yeah,
big,
our
bold.
customers aren't interested
They
in
love
pastels.
sunflowers. You know, I mean,
Pastels are of no interest. to
and
our
that's funny
customers.
because you love the
I
pastels.
love pastels. I want like a lavender and a
Like we're not
baby
going to grow
pink.
lilies, and some people love lilies, and I mean,
Yeah.
like you have to kind of make some of these choices.
Yeah.
I mean,
And for your customers, that's not my garden.
we were asked I think when we first moved in town, and we said, "Oh, we're a flower farm." The first question people said is, "Oh, do you grow mums?" They were like, "No, we're not going to grow mums."
No, not happening.
People love them.
We're not a plant nursery. Okay. Next question is
That's
okay.
funny.
So growing tulips in crates is one of the questions too. We don't grow them in crates. We'll grow them in like a raised bed kind of setup that I said we'll show you in November. But crates are effectively a smaller quantity version of the raised bed way that we do it. When we planted, we did a video planting peonies in crates to overwinter them. We have a video. You'll have to go back to last fall to find it. But basically, I took the crate and I lined it with the craft paper that we use for our bouquets.
Which it has grown through, by the way.
Yeah.
It's attached to the ground.
Perfect. But I filled it with, I would then plant the tulips and then I would fill it with 7 inches of soil on top is what I would do. And then I've seen some people kind of line the crates all in a row and then put the drip irrigation on top of the crates as a way to do it if you don't want to hand water. And then I've also seen people that are in like really cold temps that aren't concerned about chill hours. They'll put them in their high tunnel with their irrigation and all of that. We'd need to leave our crates out because we need all of the chill hours we can get where we're at. But you can grow tulips in crates. That's totally a common thing, a doable thing, not really a fussy, high drama way to grow. Especially if you are space limited.
It's mini raised gardening. I mean, and raised gardening is the best way to grow. It's just going to be a capacity problem.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's definitely advantages if you can collect crates and they're a way to.
You can fit a lot in a crate.
You can fit a decent amount.
Probably 100.
You do a lot of tulips in them. A lot of people do that. They'll just line up tulips and stuff them in the crate, and then when you're done, you just take the crate and dump it out.
Dump the compost out into your
whatever.
your garden.
Because you don't want to keep growing tulips in the same soil every year. You got to fresh that out.
Yeah. Okay, this is your question.
Okay.
After we silage tarp to kill the grass, what do we do after that? Like, what are our steps after the silage tarp has sat on virgin, ungrown in ground that we're prepping for a new field? What do you do?
We had a great video for that too. Basic process. I mean, flowers are not nutrient hungry plants like another kind of crop. So
like weighted in one specific nutrient, like high nitrogen.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like nitrogen eaters like a lot of big, veggie crops would be. So, we haven't done a whole lot, but we have the blessing of being near a mushroom farm within an hour, and they put out great compost, and we have a local truck driver that can bring a lot of that down. So that's our supplement into the soil. So it's just basically tillage to try to kill back the various grasses, and then I would just spread out compost, and then I tilled it in. And then it was a lot of manual raking so that not too many people accuse me of being lazy. A lot of hand raking with a landscape rake to try to build up the rows on top, so you're trying to get a much fluffier growing path. So I mean, it's a pretty basic process, but yeah, I mean, having a tractor to rototill and break up. We're also beneficial because we're actually on a downward slope from much hillier terrain just north of us, and it actually makes our topsoil pretty decent.
Yeah.
It's not pure like clay. It's a sandy clay loam, and you can, at least in America, I don't know if it's North America or where else in the the world has kind of similar agencies like the U.S. Geological Society, but we have like GIS databases where you can kind of zoom in on your property and you can see how they describe, what kinds of
What
soils
do we have?
It's sandy clay loam.
Sandy clay loam.
But it's like 80%, 70% clay,
Yeah.
and then it'll tell you what like it also they usually name stuff like by the soil types. Like there's all these different soil type names, and I forgot off the top of my head. But you can find some of these products and determine how good your soil is. But we had it tested with the local university when we first moved in, but they didn't really provide a whole lot of detail. Like we didn't get a percent organic matter. I think they were basically saying like it's a little low in nitrogen. That's kind of what we got, and they gave us the pH.
You should get a soil test if you don't know anything about your soil,
Right.
but we haven't done one, for the next year, which like a lot of people say you should, but I mean, it's okay.
So I mean, it's just tilling. It's compost additive, and then it's building up nice rows by trying to cut out your walking path. So you take out that soil you tilled and you throw it on top of
the mounds.
So you're trying to mound. You're trying to get it a few inches above the surround, and then you're trying to channel, water runoff down the walking path, which will get even further compressed as the summer goes on. But you don't actually kill Bermuda grass in 1 year.
Yeah.
So we're hoping next year to talk about a new way to help suppress once you're done growing is to try to cut back. And what we did before we left on this little vacation is we covered up rows that we need to be planting in October. And preparing that soil because the grasses are phenomenal this year, especially because we had a lot of July
grass farm.
We had a lot of late July rains and like torrential rain, and like the grass is just like thank you. And I mean the Bermuda is so powerful. It actually will grow up over our landscape fabric, and then it will punch its roots through the landscape fabric. So we're probably gonna have a lot of landscape fabric that's not reusable. It's been really damaged. So it's a tough situation, but it's a matter of picking it's a race against time with it. It's like can you grow the flower before the grasses take over, and hopefully in a few years it'll be much better
for Bermuda.
With better fabric and management and silage and continuing to kind of beat it back. So
if you want to see that visually, we have a video in March of this year called Turning Our Clay into Gold, and it's a lot of like drone and video shots of Eric pulling back the silage tarp that we had on all winter and prepping our beds that ended up being our late spring and into summer beds. So for visual, I would look at that video. Our last question in the spring category is, can you plant winter crops like spinach over tulip bulbs? I've never done that, and so I can't give a definitive answer, but when I was thinking about that, my question and concern would be stem length on tulips is affected by three things. This is how you can get short tulips if this goes wrong. You don't plant the bulbs deep enough. They don't get enough chill hours because tulips need to go through that cold period, which is why like in South Texas, you can't just plant a tulip in the ground and get a good tulip. You have to pre-chill it. And then the third is actually water. And so if tulips don't get enough moisture and water, they'll send up a shorter stem. So my concern and worry would be if you plant a crop over them, depending on how much water intake that crop needs, it could be stealing it too much from the bulbs, and then you're going to end up with a shorter stem. I don't know enough about growing some of these winter crops of what their water intake would be, and if you could still get enough to the tulips and not be overwatering the top crop, but depth, chill hours, and water is how you get long, beautiful tulips. And so I would be hesitant to have the water be in competition for such an expensive flower crop.
Yeah, I mean, you look up why are my tulips short?
Those are the three issues.
But you get everybody saying for sure it's this. And we had nice long tulips, and it's going to be variety, right? I mean, just like a lot of these varieties.
A 12-inch tulip will never give you 20 inches. Like, that's just never going to happen.
And like when you look on the catalogs, like they're very specific about their heights. And if you want nice paper wrappable tulip bouquets, pick the longer 18 to 24 inch ones and avoid the 12 to 18.
Which is why we don't grow doubles.
Because if you get on the short end of that,
that's when you get those pictures of like why are my tulips short? And it's like the bud is like right at ground level. It's like, what?
But we did some deep soaks of water in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
even though there's a lot of rain. It's kind of a little
They're,
counterintuitive.
they're, they're
But we
thirsty.
grow them in the raised garden concept, so it's above ground anyway, so they drain really fast.
Yes, they don't rot.
Right.
Okay, so that was our spring section. So a couple more submitted questions. Will you check the comments too if there's any new ones?
We've
Someone
got
give priority.
Elizabeth Vidgrain followed up with her Europe thing by saying it starts changing because people watch your videos. Yes, you can tutor people.
I like that.
And culture and beauty is suggestive, right? So I mean, you can suggest new ideas to people, and suddenly those are things they prefer. We have Sandra saying hi from Reynoldsburg, Ohio. Love your channel.
Hi.
Thank
We
you
used
for
to
all.
live in Ohio.
Yeah, we lived in Dayton for a while. And then Rao says he says his sunflower bundles and the gladiolus bundles go well and they sell well in Estonia.
Awesome.
So
those are very traditional flowers.
And he says, is it weird in the fall having hot, warm temps with the short days?
Yes.
Yeah, the days are it'll be. I mean, it'll start to cool down, Rao. It's by the end of September, and like surprisingly, Oklahoma can get a cold snap before some other places do, and get like a really. I mean, it's not -30 like you said, but last October 12th, we get like 20-degree night.
We are weather volatile here in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is very wild, but that's much of the Midwest, out east of the Rockies.
Someone asked, do we save our seeds, and do we have any tips if we do? We do not save our seeds because our flowers are what's considered open pollinated, which means a bumblebee lands on a red zinnia and covers his little butt in the pollen, and then he flies over to the yellow zinnia and pollinates the yellow zinnia with the red pollen. And so then if I were to save seeds from the yellow zinnia, I'm not going to necessarily get the mother plant, the zinnia, the yellow zinnia. I might get like a hybrid, a different color. It might not be a double anymore. It might revert to a single. And so in flower farming, you need to guarantee exactly what you're growing for all of your plants and your bouquets and stuff. And so because of that, we buy the seeds that were properly isolated in the seed growers and all of that. But if you're in a home gardening environment, saving seeds can actually be really fun, because when you save the seeds and you plant them the next year, often you can get like really interesting and fun varieties. Like you can get a zinnia mutant that's like purple and green together, or it's a really cool double, and that can be really fun in your landscape or a raised garden. But for like commercial profitable flower farming, you want to buy known seeds. But if you want to save seeds, we did a video last fall. I had a couple customers ask me like, I know you don't save seeds, but could I have some zinnias and celosia and blah 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 from your garden to grow at my house? And so I said sure. So I recorded a video of me saving seeds for them, and I walk you through and show you like what to look for and what the seeds look like when they're mature and stuff. So there's
and they grew well, I said.
They grew well. Yeah, we got pictures. They're really pretty. So
saving those zinnia seeds, which are like,
they look like bow and arrows, or not bow and arrows, but like arrowheads. Okay, can we film a harvest video? Yes, I'll film. It'll be sunflowers because that's what we grow in the fall. But we can film a sunflower harvest video, which I think is fun because I think it's really fun to just see buckets and buckets of sunflowers, and they're easy to harvest, so that's fun.
And hopefully some zinnias.
Hopefully, if we did our job right, we should have zinnias, but I don't know. TBD on that. And then last question before some of the bigger category ones: tips for selling direct to customers in a rural area. What comes to mind when you hear that? Since we are rural, well, we're not like Walmart is an hour away rural, but we're not in a metro center.
Yeah, I mean, depends. I mean, how small is your county? You know, how many thousands of people? I mean, we live in a county with 60,000, but like we're within 35-40 minutes of Tulsa, so we're talking a mid-level metropolitan area, and we've attracted people.
From 30 minutes away.
More than that. Like we've had some deep.
Those I feel like are super fans though.
Super fans. Thanks for being super fans. But I mean, building prestige and brand is what you gotta be patient with it.
Marketing.
If you're trying to do a roadside stand and like your county's got 10,000 people in it, that's probably gonna be tough. You might have to focus on farmers markets or do the drive. And then I mean, like you do have to make the real analysis if it's even a viable business model to do. But I
Depending,
mean,
yeah.
start. I mean, you can still start by just saying like, "Hey, my goal is not to be $100,000 flower farm in year one. I'm just going to say, can I make a profit by year two?" And maybe that is $5,000 in your pocket. And instead of saying like, "I'm going to become mega," focus on profitability, and next thing you know, you might be able to start reaching people word of mouth with a good product. I mean, we focus pretty heavily here on, like we said, it's steak and potatoes, so we try to simplify and focus on what people love to get, so they don't come to our. We have some people still come, even though it's the same bouquet 20 times, 40 times over. They don't know which one to pick because there is variety within. Obviously,
The colors are
the
different and
colors are
stuff, yeah.
different varieties. But what was I going to say there? It
Steak and
was
potatoes.
steak and potatoes, but also like we're focusing on the quality and the long lasting value of the bouquet. So you're very discerning when you go in and you're saying like, I'm only gonna pick the premium here that I know I'm gonna get. I mean, you try to hit the 7+ day mark, which is well above industry standards, so that people are like, it still looks amazing, and I came last week, I want more, because you're trying to build repeat customers. And then I would say every customer you win, get
Yeah.
to know their name, greet them by name.
So what you're saying, and I completely agree, is that I think there's a misperception that flowers sell themselves. Like, I'm going to focus all of my energy
Right.
on growing the most beautiful, the most unique and rare flowers, and I'm going to grow them really beautifully. And then I can just take a nice picture, put it on Facebook, and people are just going to be like throwing cash at me because the flowers are so pretty. And honestly, that's not the case at all. I mean, obviously, we're selling a beautiful luxury product, but the flowers don't sell themselves. You need to be connecting with your customers. You need to be selling a story. You need to be selling your story. You need to be selling what your flowers can do for that person that buys your flowers. It cannot be, I'm going to expend 90% of my energy being super focused on the proper spacing and the correct post-process harvesting and growing all the different varieties and all these hardy annuals and seed starting and all of that, and then like I have 10% left over to do like a Facebook post every 4 or 5 days, or I grow all these beautiful flowers and then I pop up on Friday and say the stand's open tomorrow, come get flowers, and that's all you posted in 4 or 5 days, and that's all you did post. People are not going to get in their car, drive to you, and give you money for a luxury product if that's your marketing and branding. You have to show up every day and look at your branding and marketing as, at a minimum, 30% of your effort in your business and in flower farming to get people to come. We don't sell out at our flower stand because I objectively grow the best zinnia in Rogers County. Now we grow beautiful flowers, but I and their quality and their worth, their amount, and all of the above. We're proud of our product, but I spend at least 30%, if not 40% of my time on marketing and telling our story, connecting with customers, showing up every single day on social media that people are excited and look forward to and want to come to our farm and want to come to us. And then they end up buying the flowers. And I think that's a big problem that you see in first year, second year, and sometimes even third year flower farms of why their flowers are not selling. I would say more often than not, it's less about the quality of the flower and it's more about lack of attention and effort placed on your marketing. And if you really absolutely hate marketing, you hate social media, you hate having your face seen, you don't know what to post, I think you're going to have a hard time in the retail environment. And that is why some flower farmers prefer wholesale and florists, because what their marketing consists of largely is emailing florists their product ability sheets, orders are placed, and they drop it off at a florist shop, and that's what they find to be more comfortable. Retail, I think, requires a lot more marketing, a lot more social media effort if you want to be selling, more than 6 or 7 bouquets from a front porch. That's my spiel about, like, you spend time on marketing. Don't focus so much
You're
aggressively
seeing
on
the fruit, and I
growing.
mean we've seen it in several places where several of the other big flower farms out there say be an A plus marketer and a B plus grower. I.e., put more priority in customer development than you are in the product that you're growing. You obviously have to have both. You can't just have nothing.
It can be like a terrible flower.
And then I think there was a great comment on another flower post on Facebook. Somebody was talking about, hey, I want to start a farm and I have an acre and I was going to do this. I want to do 50 rows times 50 feet. And they're trying to launch right at half acre, even more than a quarter acre. And then somebody commented to say, like, hey, give me a good marketer and 6,000 square feet of growing. And like, they're going to knock it out of the park. And that's kind of where we're at. Like, we're talking like we're doing less than 3,000 square feet of full growing space. And that's going to grow a little bit next year, but it's not going to be enormous amount. Next year, we're adding in a 100-foot tunnel and stuff like that. But
yeah.
It's more about let the customer demand kind of outstrip supply. But we're not even in a supply issue.
No,
really. There's like, such a high density product.
Yeah, and I think if you want examples of how I think it actually isn't as complicated as a lot make it seem, like follow our Facebook page. I run our social media typically. Follow us on Facebook. That's where I talk to my customers. Instagram is your customers, or excuse me, Facebook is your customers, Instagram is your fans typically. So like a bunch of flower farms follow me on Instagram and I post a little bit differently over there. But if you're curious, how do I talk to customers? How do I market? What am I saying? What am I posting every day? Just give us a follow on Facebook and you'll see it's not highly curated, crafted, markety, salesy sounding stuff. It's a lot of it is just showing up every single day and posting something that's going on the farm and talking to our customers so they kind of feel like every day they get a little peek behind the curtain of like what I'm up to or what's blooming or what project we're working on. It's not all salesy. And I know that can feel forced, and every picture is not styled with a filter and the beautiful fluorescent lighting, and it's not like that every single time. And so I think we kind of like overthink, like, well, this doesn't look perfect enough, or this is boring, or I don't know what to post.
Don't fuss too much.
Don't fuss too much.
Better to post something
than not post.
Than to just get freaked out. Yeah. Photos cover up a multitude of errors.
That's true, yeah.
Even little short videos covers up. We have a couple questions online.
Yeah.
Yanika was asking if pro-cut sunflowers seeds, are they sterile seeds?
You know, I've thought that so many times and have not Googled the answer. And I want to say yes, because they're pollenless. So I don't understand.
No, they're not sterile because we knew they grew in the field we had last year. They just aren't. They grew kind of weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually right. So they grow, but they aren't true to parent. Like a Horizon Pro Cut that drops its seeds is not going to be the exact same Horizon Pro Cut the next year. Like it's going to be kind of this like funky cousin. Because we have a bunch of funky cousins growing in our field. That's right. Good point. Yeah. So not sterile, but not accurate to the point where like I wouldn't save those seeds and think you're going to get the same thing.
Rooted Living Homestead asks if this video will be saved. Yes, they get saved. I hope so.
Stop it. Don't it does. It'll post.
We're doing this on a tablet, so it's a little different. So hopefully it's set up correctly. And then Rick Summer says, totally agree on marketing. I post pictures almost every day and sale out of Iris's plants every year, 7 years in a row.
That's awesome. And Rick follows us on Facebook. I see Rick all the time.
And then a stranger, Cat F, not sure what that stands for.
Hi, Cat.
Customers want real, not forced. And I agree. I think that platitude, heavy marketing campaign that looks like a motivational poster does not, I think people are, they know what that is now.
And if every one of your pictures has like a filter on it, or it's clearly like you rearranged your living room to take the perfect picture, customers see that and they're just like, I'm not getting what it actually looks like in that moment. I'm getting so curated. And if everything is curated, I think customers start to feel less related to your brand and they kind of zone out a bit.
Yeah, one of your focuses is as you take these pictures, you're kind of like, these could be in your hands soon. Mm-hmm. And it's focused on them, your potential customer, more than like, look what I did.
Yeah.
It's like we do a little bit of like who we are and our family and our dreams, stuff like that, but it's really more about like, hey, we want to give this to you. it could be yours. Come get it. And people are like, I want this thing now. It looks so fun. I got to peek behind the scenes,
Yeah.
see how it was made, and people are getting. I think they're getting more connected to like the source of stuff.
Yeah.
Like we're getting a little jaded.
Local matters more now.
Local matters. Like where does your food come from? Where does your flour come from? We're getting a little more, I guess, focused on our communities to take care of each other. So
that's a good point. So don't always post like the end state product. Like don't always be posting just the jar arrangement or the bouquet, but like post the seed starting, post the planting, post the plants growing, post a flower in the field, post your harvest buckets. Like take them on the whole process and not just here's some flowers for sale, come give me money. Like give them the whole walkthrough.
You're building anticipation.
Yeah, exactly. So someone asked, this is a funny question that I don't totally know how to answer, but someone asked us, how do we harvest with so many bumblebees around? I thought that was kind of funny because we have lots of bumblebees, but I time my harvest to when they're least likely to be angry at me, which is I try to get out there really early in the morning before they wake up. So if they're on the flowers and stuff, they tend to just like wake up and fly away angrily. Or later in the evening when they're kind of largely done with their job. But if I go out at like 11 a.m., I get a little nervous that I'm going to get stung because there's so many of them out and about. That's really my only answer of just that timing.
And plant basil.
Oh, they love basil. So yeah, just send them all to the basil flowers and they'll leave their zinnias alone. Yeah, no. So I haven't been stung yet. But yeah, I do kind of time it. I mean, it's almost like I feel like I'm almost on a clock. Like by about 9:30, they're kind of like, okay, leave our field now, lady. Like we have work to do.
Yeah. The bumblebees aren't an issue though. They're too big, but they're adorable.
They're cute, little fat butts.
Little fat butts poked inside flowers.
So we have two more questions, and they're bigger questions. And you're going to answer a lot of it. But you wanted to talk about decision paralysis, which does kind of blend in a bit of what we've already talked about, of like why we've chosen to be steak and potatoes. And when you are now thinking about like hardy annuals to grow, and you're thinking about your spring layout plans, and you're kind of putting together what are my bouquet recipes going to be, we do kind of have opinions on maybe what you should be thinking about from the customer standpoint, and not just like a flower farmer brain, which is look at this catalog of 1,000 things I could grow. Kind of put on the customer hat of maybe what they're thinking when they come to buy bouquets from you.
Let's put on your psychologist hat for a minute.
Take off the farmer hat.
It's just when we watch, obviously a lot of you I'm sure watch many of the other flower farmers on YouTube, and you see kind of how they're approaching it. A lot of the big flower farms don't have as much of a media presence, so we're all tutored by what we watch. And I think you kind of have those two different brains, where it's like the creative brain, and then there's kind of the more, what would be left side, right side brain kind of stuff going on.
Structure and
regulation and more repetitive stuff. And I think if you can put on the repetitive brain when you work, or you might get bored as the flower farmer. And I'm very much creative. Not that you're not creative, but
you are creative and I am the robot.
I would get bored producing 50 of the same bouquet. I would get bored. I'd be like, I want to make a different configuration. I'd start getting creative. Obviously, I get slower.
Yeah.
And the production would slow down, and I would produce
I love
less.
a good repetitive task.
You put your podcast in, you're like, I'll make the same bouquet 50 times.
Happily.
And so when you do that, you're thinking like each person isn't gonna pick from 50. They're gonna pick from a couple. They're going to try to narrow it down really fast. And so I think a lot of variety today in all domains, like we talk about like, the Netflix effect, where you go in there and you spend 2 hours just perusing the choices.
Yeah, you can't pick what to watch.
And then you never actually watch anything.
Yeah.
Now it's become the whole, I guess, joke about it is that people are...
We're going to lay in bed and decide what to watch and then fall asleep. Yeah.
So we're trying to reduce some of that and say psychologically, like, we will help you by not having as many. And I think it's similar to like when you watch some of those cooking shows, like a Gordon Ramsay will go to a local restaurant that's ailing and struggling in its profitability, and the first thing he'll notice is like their menu's got 99 items on it, and I'll say like, "What do you guys do well here? Like, what was it that you were founded on?"
Narrow it
And he'll
down.
narrow them down to less than a dozen things and say, "This is what you should do, and you should do well." And I think that's what we're, at least it's my philosophy that I'm, that you're fully on board with, of just let's try to reduce that paralysis so that customers don't have too many choices and help them. And that allows probably differentiation if you're competing with other flower farmers in your area too. You might say, hey, like you want to do really well with irises, I'm not going to even bother with that. I'm going to offer and differentiate from you by having a completely different product and reduce some of that decision paralysis. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're doing a little bit of.
Yeah, we don't have, like, for example, a very real world example is like I don't put together 5 different bouquet recipes for a flower stand day. Like that's not how I spend our time making our bouquets, and that's not what we're offering. I generally, and if you watch our how to make a bouquet quickly video, I kind of go over this and show this to you, but I give color, a bit of color variation to customers within a set quantity of flowers. And so when they approach our flower stand, at initial glance, everything looks very similar because it's the same kind of flower. So they can instantly tell, like, look at all those sunflowers and marigolds. But then within each bouquet, it's like, okay, well, this one has some purple zinnias I love, but oh, I love this bubblegum pink zinnia in this other one. And that's the variation, rather than I have like 10 bouquets that have this kind of combination of flowers, and then I have another 10 in totally different colors and totally different variety of flowers, and I have another 10. Personally, I think visually it becomes overwhelming, especially when your customers themselves are not flower farmers, so they're not instantly identifying everything that they're seeing. I think it kind of becomes like the hot sauce wall at the grocery store where you're like, there are 30 different varieties. I have no idea how to differentiate, like, what's the best value, what's going to last the longest, what's the right pick. And I feel overwhelmed and less confident about my decision versus narrowing it down to like the customers making a decision between maybe which color zinnia pops out at them, or this one has an extra sunflower and I love sunflowers, so I'm going to go with that one. I think it makes it a calmer experience of the customer making a choice.
Yeah, and we're not even bothering with price discrimination kind of stuff, like different tiers. You want a $5 or 20?
It's not like we have a $10, $20, and a $30. It's like $20, so they know that, like, no matter what I pick, I'm getting $20 worth of flowers, and I need to pick my favorite, and I'm not having to pick between 20 different things. It's only a couple, and I'm picking the one that like stands out to me most, and that's the decision. And I think next year the only difference I'm going to make, because I'm listening to my customers, is I'm probably going to have some straight bunches available of flowers that are like top favorites that customers really love. And I think what'll actually end up happening is we'll get an upsale. So they'll buy a mixed bouquet, and then they'll also pick up a second bouquet that's like straight sunflowers, because they love sunflowers so much they want to combine it with their mixed bouquet for a much bigger bouquet. I think we might add that, but it won't be a bunch of different recipes.
It'll be 10, 20, 30, $40, $60 bouquets,
Yeah.
and different themes for each one. It's whatever you can do to respect your own time in the process.
Yeah, because making up those recipes, making the different combos, putting that aside, and then like switching to like I'm making something completely different, that is extra labor, that is extra mental fatigue, versus like 50 of a very similar recipe. You'll be able to go a lot faster, and like your time does matter. If you can shave off a couple hours of your bouquet making time, like that does legitimately translate into profitability. So I'd consider that. Our last question, I thought this was fun to end with, is how did we decide to become flower farmers, and what were we doing before all of this?
Ooh. Well, our story is that I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and so coming up on retirement, where we were currently stationed at the time, decided to move to Oklahoma, and saw a home we loved and property we loved, so we put an offer in, and that kind of set the trajectory of where we were going. But kind of before we even did that, I just looked at you and said, we need to make a move towards economic use of the land. So we're very convicted of that from a biblical perspective. That, and it's just also a historical perspective, as most people had to use their land to make money, whether it be growing your own food or running your own
Raising
animals
livestock,
or whatever the case might be. I mean, this was so part of human history up until like 5 seconds ago,
right? Yeah.
where people just use their homes as like mausoleums, and it's just nothing goes on. And luckily, Oklahoma is very much in that spirit, with lots of homesteads and lots of people running animals everywhere. So much so that it's kind of overwhelming to us, because we're pretty much suburbanites. We're going to start moving in that direction to kind of ease it out. Like Oklahoma, that's that people are used to using their land for economic value, for chickens, eggs, sheep, whatever. So that's an awesome culture. But I think that still exists a lot of places in the world, but in America, it's not. So I say, hey, let's do something that could potentially be economically valuable, and you happen to have the skill and passion and desire in flowers. And so I was like, why not give a shot at flower farming as, I hate to use the word side hustle, but I mean,
I don't like the term side
it's just
hustle,
economic use of the land. Like,
yeah.
turn the soil. It's less for me to mow, which I don't enjoy, especially this year. I mean, that grass, and especially in August, grass is just, they're cranking.
Flowers are more valuable than grass.
Flowers are more valuable than grass, and we have plenty of grass left over for kids to run around in when they need to get some exercise, even as they get older. So the vision was set, and I said, let's give this a shot. And we also threw in the YouTube thing as part of that marketing endeavor. So I mean, these were kind of a dual phase approach, and we're adjusting as we go.
Yeah.
And learning a lot.
And
next year is going to be, I think it's going to be banging. It's going to be awesome.
I think next year is going to be
It'll
awesome.
be really exciting.
And we'll get to share it, yeah. But you were in the Air Force?
Yep.
I worked in politics. We met in Washington, D.C. on eHarmony. Got married.
No, we're going way back. I didn't know the story was
going.
We're
just telling a little bit, because you said we're
way back.
Yeah, we haven't been married that long. Then we got married and moved all around to the Air Force, had 4 babies that we homeschool and work on the farm, and we have a full-time job on top of it all.
The other reason to do it is I do want to teach how to run a business through practical and hard work. Getting dirty with your hands. I just think a lot of kids don't do anything. They go to school and they don't do anything in their home. They don't do business. They don't learn how to run it. So as they get older, we'll probably show them how to run the books and how to make a profit where it really matters, and also any other legal stuff that we learn.
That was just the hard labor. The boys wash buckets, and my daughter helps.
Yeah, we're starting to they get their chores, and they're being compensated. So
they're farm employees.
They're farm employees a little bit. That's our approach. I know some people would say don't pay your kids or whatever, but we're doing that for stuff associated with just the flower farm.
Not for making their bed, but for washing buckets.
Although they will ask if they get $1 for everything now.
Is this a $1 level
Is this
chore?
a $1 chore, or is this a $2 chore?
Yeah.
And can you pay me now?
Or is this $0?
Can I get an advance?
Can I get an advance?
What are you getting? You can't even drive anywhere yet. So.
Did we miss any questions before we? Thanks for all the live questions.
Rooted Living Homestead. We live the next town over. I love the raw posts. It doesn't feel fake. It has inspired me to plant. I think plant is the word. So many more flowers for spring.
Good.
We sold some bouquets at the farmer's market.
That's awesome.
Again, focus on profit, not on can I gross, $100 million.
$100 million flower farm. Yeah.
You don't need much space to sell a decent amount. You really don't.
No.
And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. If we accidentally missed a question or you think of questions, if you ever add them in the comments of our videos or on social media, I keep like a running iPhone notes pad of questions so that when we do our next live, I have them all logged. So if you ever think of anything, just shoot it to us in any of our social media platforms and I'll save it and we'll try to answer it at the next one. But thanks for joining us from all over the world. That was really cool.
I know, really cool. So
that was
awesome.
really cool.
Thanks for participating.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.